So a lot of you in the comments on my various videos I've made recently have asked me my opinion on things like Brexit and American healthcare. So I'm pleased to let you know I actually did an interview last Friday night on a Twitter page called The Real Progressives, done by a lady called Joy, who's very nice and was very welcoming and let me come on even though she's had a lot bigger guests. She's had AOC on there, she's had Ro Khanna. And yeah, so go follow them on YouTube, go follow them on Facebook. And basically what I've done, I've got all the highlights, the best bits, and I've listed them. So hopefully what I would have also done by this time is also in the comments, I've put all the timestamps so you can just go through them. So I've covered things like American versus British healthcare, American versus British tuition fees. I've also done things about Corbyn, as well as Ilhan Omar and Antisemitism debate in America. I've also covered Trump and Beto. So go have a look, you know, see what you like, perhaps watch the whole thing. And yeah, if you were wondering my opinion on various different things, I've just done a nice long form interview with this lady. So yeah, give a follow to The Real Progressives on Facebook, and I hope you enjoy this interview.
So you did a video about how Bernie would be the best choice for America.
Yeah.
And can you just kind of touch on, as someone in the UK, can you touch on why you would say that?
Yeah, sure. So coming from a European perspective and a British perspective, our politics is a lot different. So you have a lot of hysterical people in America calling all Democrats leftists, and it's quite amusing coming from the UK when your Democratic Party really resembles something more like the Tory Party in the UK, just because of how left our politics has been shifted through the ages. And we obviously are a lot older as a country, which is fair enough as well. But yeah, so for example, Bernie proposing universal healthcare is something we've had in this country since 1948. So you can see how backwards America is in that regard. And it's not that our countries are so different in a lot of ways, but I think America hasn't been brought to its knees in a way like this country has. So in World War II, our economy and our country in general was absolutely devastated. And even though America and Britain had similar casualties, I think it's about 400,000 each. Obviously, as a proportion of the population, it's a lot bigger to have that many British young men dead and many more injured. And so, and we were bombed from 1940 for about a year, and then we're bombed again by like V rockets and stuff. So it really terrorized the country. So what the Labour government that came in, so what your viewers may not know is that Winston Churchill, our great Prime Minister, was actually voted out of office before the war was over. And, you know, he's seen as this heroic figure in the world, saying stand up to Hitler. But people, you know, he was quite reviled because he's an elitist figure. His dad was prominent in the Tory party. He's from an elite background. So his government was voted out, and this Labour government was voted in, the Attlee government. And they introduced all these social reforms in the just after the war, to just be like, you know, we've gone all through these things and we need these socialist reforms just to benefit the country. You know, you shouldn't die if you don't have money to go to the doctor, essentially. And that's like a landmark government we had in our case. Whereas in America, because you benefited so heavily off both world wars, it's just been like, you know, the American way is the best way. The capitalist way is the best way. Capitalism equals freedom, and we don't need to change anything. And, you know, it's just a different mindset. And because you've just gone from strength to strength as a country and become the most powerful country in the history of the world, I think a lot of the time it's lost being like, we need some introspection and think about how we're flawed as a country rather than we're the best, we're the wealthiest. Because it doesn't matter if you're the wealthiest, if the UN, which they said lately, that the US has some of the worst poverty in the developed world. And in terms of Bernie Sanders, for me, I think he's more socialist than he lets on, but just what he's saying just makes complete sense in the context of European and even global politics in a lot of ways. Because he just says there's things that's normal here is seen as radical and what people say communist in the US, which is just very interesting to me. And that's why I thought my perspective might have been a bit helpful, because it's like, you know, we've grown up in a country where even my parents weren't even born before we had a national health service. So that's how old it is.
So as far as going to the hospital and things, how does it work there? Do you guys pay copays or you know, anything like that, or is it just all free?
Okay, so you have general taxation, income tax, which funds a lot of social programs, but you also have a national insurance tax, which funds a lot of things like your pension, for example, but it also goes into healthcare. And if people aren't, what happens is sometimes, you know, there's not enough money from the national insurance, like taxes, so you put more money from general taxes into the NHS. And that's how it's funded. So you pay into this system, and, you know, there is a special tax for it, but there's also part of your general taxes as well. And, you know, and that means you just you get registered for your GP or your local doctors or hospital, whatever, and you just walk in and you get seen. So I have been very lucky. I haven't really had many health scares, but I remember I thought I broke my wrist when I was playing football, and I just went in. I waited for about 2.5 hours. I got seen. They gave me an X-ray and they said, you know, nothing was broken, and that's it. I just went off, no bill or anything.
As far as healthcare goes, a lot of times, and mainly you hear this about Canada, but a lot of times people say, well, they can get their healthcare for free, but they have to wait 3 years to have the surgery, and then it's not quality when they have it.
Yeah.
Can you touch on that?
Well, what the problem is in both Canada, so I don't know if there's this veteran from England called Harry's Last Stand was his Twitter username. He fought in World War II, but he brought to light a lot of what they're doing in Canada. Basically, the right wing in both these countries are cutting funding for their national health services, and the problems mainly stem from that rather than the healthcare being bad. So we've had a Tory government in this country since 2010. We've only had Labour in power during Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, and then before that, it wasn't since I think 1976 or something. So people make the argument that Tony Blair and that administration is more like Conservative anyway. So we haven't had a proper socialised government for ages, and it's just been cuts and cuts to the NHS for ages. And in some instances, it can get bad, like the waiting times for certain things. It's not like if you're going to die tomorrow, they're going to be like, yeah, you got to wait 3 weeks for your thing. You know, you will get seen, but there is some more specialised things. So mental health stuff, you can be on a long waiting list for that. General operations that you need for stuff that's not life-threatening, it can get pretty bad. But at the same time, if you really need it, and like I said, it's called a walk-in centre, so it's just A&E. So you just walk in and you get seen for the most part. If you can stick out the wait, when the wait is probably between 2 and 4, maybe a bit longer hours. But if you're not going all the time, it's not really a big deal. Like for me, I've been once, and that's fine for me to pay. But yeah, if people are attacking British healthcare and Canadian healthcare, it's more because of an effort by the right wing to cut it, rather than it's just failing as an idea, really, because that's what the problem is. And you know, in this country, I'll give a bit of anecdotal experience. One of my friends at university was very disabled, and then she received a big cut for the money that she needed to pay a carer, and she needed a carer full time. But that's not because the system's not working. That's because the right wing in this country are cutting funding for it, and that's what I want to get out there. So yeah, you do get examples where it's bad, but I think America might be similar as well. So I don't think it's a great argument against universal healthcare. And what people say, if your healthcare is so great at the moment, in their opinion, you don't have to wait. Well, I hope that translates when you get universal healthcare, and you'll have the best healthcare in the world when it's universal.
Do you guys also have free college?
Yeah, so we haven't had free college for I think the last 30 years. My dad went to university, and it was more a rare thing back then, and he got paid to go to university. They gave him money to go to university, which was crazy back then. But what happened is the Tories started making it more like you have to pay for it, and then the Blair government, you had to pay even more. So I paid about £9,000 a year for my undergrad, and £7,000 for my master's degree, which in compared to America, it's not the worst, because I'm probably going to pay that off if I got a decent job in my 30s and stuff. It's not going to follow me around forever, but it still has things like you get interest rates and everything. So, and because we have a right-wing government who aren't really committed to stopping it rising all these costs, yeah, it probably will be more than what I've got at the moment. And it is sort of following in America's footsteps and making college way too expensive. But what the problem is in this country as well, I think it's different in America. Pretty much everyone goes to university now. Everyone. Like, you don't have to be super bright. You don't have to be upper class. You can be any class and pretty much go to uni, because they'll give you the loans and everything. But at the end of the day, and one thing they do, if you don't make over £21,000 a year. You don't have to start paying it back, and if you don't make that for 20 years, you never have to pay it back. So if you are in a low income job for most your life after uni for the next couple of decades, the debt just gets written off.
What is it like in the UK as far as green? Do you have, are you guys green friendly, or are you transitioning?
So I think the UK is a lot better on these issues. I think we ran, I think it was the whole country ran on renewable energy for a day. We've been testing it out and stuff. And in my own experience, there's a lot of electric car use and just electric stations to charge your car and everything. And I think in general, it's a fair bit better than the US, and we also don't pollute as much as well, because the US is one of the biggest polluters in the world, along with China and countries like Brazil, which add to the climate change, and other industrialized countries like India. But yeah, I think it's a bit better. We also have not that it really it's not as good, but a significant majority of the country actually vote for the Green Party. But because of our parliamentary system, we only have one Green MP. But if you would total the people voting for these parties, it would actually be, I think, Conservative, Labour Party, and then UKIP, and then the Green Party. But because of our system, they're not represented properly. So there is a large Green element in this country. And if it was fair, that's all of the parties it would be like. But instead, it is actually Conservative, Labour, Lib Dems, who don't have a lot of support. So it is a point to our system. But I think a lot of people here are a bit more green conscious, I guess, and it's a bigger thing. We just had, I don't know if you saw it, that big march for climate change. I'm sure America's doing similar things, but we had one in London with all the school kids, which is nice to see. And I think what is different about our country is because I think basic education in the UK is a lot better about these issues. I think everyone sort of learns about it, and it's not politicized as much. So you have in America, the president of the United States, for one thing, not believing in global warming. Whether that's because he's genuinely stupid or he has lots of financial interest to not believe in it is really up for debate. But then you have nearly a whole party who don't take it seriously. And I think what's different about America and the UK is that you can't get away in the UK, even if you're a right-winger, with being openly stupid. You can't just say, climate change doesn't exist. The debate would be about how much is too much about changing the economy. Not the debate wouldn't be, this doesn't exist, let's do nothing, versus someone be like, no, it's going to destroy our planet, let's do something. So I think that's the difference in the UK. And it's a various reasons in the US. You have a strain of Christianity which is pretty much insane, fundamentally insane, and there's lots of reasons for that. And then you also have a country, and it's kind of correlates. The people who love this Christianity, who are insane, also despise educated people. So it's not a great recipe for helping with climate change when you have, and a lot of these people is white working class in Midwest states and stuff like that. So it's not helping with their prospects, and they get fed a lie. And I touched on it in one of my latest videos. I think in Wales we used to have a load of coal mines and stuff, whole towns set up for coal mines, and then we just stopped using coal, and the coal ran out, and that was it. The jobs all just went. But the difference is that was in 1930s and stuff, whereas in America, you'll have this sort of problem because of what Trump's been doing, trying to prop up the coal industry. You'll have this problem in the modern age, and I don't even know what that would look like. And something Andrew Yang touched on is that all these jobs go, which he was talking more in regards to technology, improving automated systems. But even when jobs go like this, because of the awareness of everyone, because we're all connected now, he said it could look pretty ugly. And we had the Luddites in Britain during the Industrial Revolution. We'd go and smash up technology and things. He was saying you can imagine something similar in the US, but it's even worse because the way we're replacing jobs and everything is going to put a lot of people out of work. And these people, a lot of them aren't necessarily bad people for believing Trump. It's their lives, and they're going to find themselves out of a job at some point because it's just not sustainable. And I think that's the difference with the UK and the US. I think we've at least tried to move on a bit from that, and you can't get away with just being outright stupid. No one's going to buy it. And I think that's why a UK Trump could never happen. Because the working class hate the poor, and most people hate stupid people, and I think that often they hate both of them. So you couldn't have a UK Trump. Touch on that a tiny bit. I think Americans are unaware how much British people, even if they had agreed with his politics, they just don't like him because he's just so stupid. And that's why you have someone like Nigel Farage who gets a bit more support, because he's actually, even though I find him quite insidious, he's a very smart guy and he's a good speaker. and he's very good at motivating his people, and he's very good at painting himself as someone who's lower class and like for the people, and you can kind of buy it, even though he is a wealthy man himself. Whereas Trump, you know, that's why I'm saying UK Trump can happen, because no one here would believe that someone like that could be fighting for them, and someone who's so stupid could really help their problems. So I think that's the difference in our countries.
What about, like, I know growing up, one of my first, you know, I didn't grow up in a very political family at all. And one of my first exposures was Tony Blair.
Yeah.
How is he regarded?
Oh, people hate Tony Blair in this country. So I made a video on it about just a little, like a mini documentary on the Iraq War, talking about how people really love Tony Blair. But because of his decision to involve us in the Iraq War, people really hate Tony Blair. And genuinely, if he didn't do that, I think he would still be regarded as a good prime minister, maybe one of the best in recent times. But that is just such a disaster. Like, for someone who's meant to be from the Labour Party, allying himself with George Bush when France and Germany and other European countries don't want to join this alliance. And when you go back and look at the evidence, it's so clear that all this stuff was such garbage. And this is anecdotal as well. Like, my professor, he said, you know, Chinese Whispers, he said what his mentor was one of the experts that Tony Blair consulted about the Iraq War. And he asked these experts, he's like, do we have to go do this? Is Saddam Hussein like another Hitler? And they're like, no, he's pretty much traditional in this regard. People, the British government have backed in the past. And then he's like, oh, but Saddam's uniquely evil. And that sort of exposes his thinking. Like, it sort of, he like even got caught up in the rhetoric the American public was sold. And that is why he's absolutely hated in this country. And people have taken his government to court about it, you know, to say like all the soldiers who died in that war. And we're really bad for this. Like, lately, we've just been charging some people who committed war crimes in Northern Ireland. But generally, the military are quite protected in this regard. But yeah, everyone hates Tony Blair. Like, socialist people, working class people, no matter what their political affiliation. Right wing people obviously hate him as well. But one thing I won't let people escape: Tony Blair couldn't have got the Iraq War without the Tory party, because most of the Labour Party voted against it. All the Tory party voted for it. So even though he was a Labour Prime Minister, I don't accept that it's Labour's fault that the Iraq War happened when the Tory party propped up all this warmongering he did. So they both share the blame. But even when David Cameron became Prime Minister, he acted like he didn't vote for it, and Theresa May as well. And they did. And they're just as guilty as he is, in my opinion.
But what is your take on Theresa May?
Well, do you mind if I just explain what Brexit really is? Like, all this sideshow. Okay, so Theresa May voted to remain in the EU, right? But she kept it pretty quiet. It's sort of like a House of Cards situation. She kept it pretty quiet. Boris Johnson broke ranks with his friend David Cameron and said he wanted to leave, even though he's never really leaned that way significantly in his UK political life. And basically what happened, it's a Tory leadership contest under the guise of Brexit negotiations. And this is why she won't give up power, because it's literally the Tory party fighting itself. So you have one side led by people like Boris Johnson and Michael Gove, and egged on with people like Nigel Farage, who's in UKIP. And they're fighting centrist Tories. But then even a lot of centrist Tories don't really like Theresa May. So she's hated by both sides of her party for different reasons. And also, it gets more complicated that the Tory party paid the DUP, which is the Northern Ireland Protestant party, to prop them up because they lost their majority in the 2017 election. So they hate her a lot of the time as well, because she's not doing enough for them. So basically, all her allies really hate her. And then just generally, everyone else just would hate her anyway because she's a Tory. So SNP, the Scottish Nationalist Party, the Labour Party, Green Party, even the Lib Dems and everything, they all hate her anyway. And this in general, I think you get most people generally don't like her because she's doing such a bad job. The only people who would like her, but not really, they'd happily see her be replaced by Boris Johnson, are people who want a no-deal Brexit because they think, I don't know, because she's doing such a bad deal, that's what might happen. But generally, I think her and David Cameron, because she's taken the brunt of it, I think they would be remembered as two of the worst prime ministers in the last maybe 150 years. And I don't think you'll find anyone who's really got a great thing to say about Theresa May, because she hasn't done anything good. And she also had the Windrush scandal under hers, which is kind of like the stuff you've had with ICE. It's like where people who've been living here their whole lives, they came over after the war to help rebuild England, are being deported back to places like Jamaica and places in the West Indies, which they haven't been since they were children. And that's also happened under her watch. So, and the Tory. We call it the same Tory government because it's just continuation of them, even though she's the new prime minister, because she was David Cameron's Home Secretary. And the damage they've done overall to this country, I don't think they'll be let off lightly in the history books, to be honest.
What about what are your thoughts on Jeremy Corbyn?
Yeah, so this is pretty complicated for me because, like we were saying earlier, like, I am a lot younger, and I think when you're a young person, you can probably agree with me. Your political evolution changes a lot. So when Jeremy Corbyn first came on the scene, I didn't actually like him, not really at all. I probably even consider myself more of a centrist. I'll say this is when I was about 18, 19. So I'm 23 now. And I didn't like him, but I always agreed with what he said about foreign policy, like about the Saudis, about Israel, and things like this. I always agreed with that, but I just didn't think his ideas were super sustainable. And I thought he had a bit of an ego about him because he would bring up these things sometimes at irrelevant places, and I still think it's bad. So at the opening of a investigation into anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, he compared Israel to ISIS, which on the surface sounds really bad. And the point was, not all Israelis support Netanyahu in his actions. The same way not all Muslims support ISIS. But it just was stupid to bring that up when you're investigating anti-Semitism. So there's problems like that. But yeah, generally I didn't like him. And then I think Brexit just really turned me around, just because I was like, at least, even though he doesn't like the EU, even with the referendum, he didn't really campaign that hard to stay in because he doesn't like it, because traditionally socialists don't like the EU. And I think that's a different, because I think that's what differentiates Corbyn and Bernie. I think Corbyn is hardcore old school socialist. I think Bernie isn't, because I think there's something in America. I don't think you can be like Corbyn for various different reasons, but I think especially the context of Bernie's upbringing, being a mayor in a rural place as well, whereas Jeremy Corbyn's from London and very industrialized, poor places and stuff. I think it's a bit different coming from a city, how socialist you are, because obviously Karl Marx had envisioned in Marxist revolution, it's mainly carried out by the industrial workers, and it's focused on the industrial sector, really. But I really turned around on him, and the election in 2017, he was really great at campaigning. Like, everyone said, why couldn't he have done this in the EU referendum? Because he was so amazing at it. And then just generally, as I've gotten older now, and Theresa May's government has been such a joke, I'm just like really in for Corbyn now, and I never used to be. Mainly because, like with any sort of figure like that, he got a bit of a cult following early on with young people. And I thought people just took him easy without really dissecting his politics. And that kind of annoyed me because, wanting to be like not mainstream and just take a step back, I didn't really want to support him. But yeah, now I'm all in on him. And I would happily leave the EU if he became prime minister, because I don't think that's actually going to happen. But I staying in the EU and having a Tory party for like another 10 years, I wouldn't want that. I'd rather leave and him become the prime minister. Because just one more thing, socialist arguments to leave the EU actually make sense. And I don't know if you saw that bus with saying we'll save money for the NHS if we leave the EU that Boris Johnson was peddling. But basically, that's a legitimate argument. But the one thing that made it so stupid is that the only people who wanted Brexit were right-wing millionaires, and literally everyone else didn't. So I think that's what shows you everything. Like, that's not the makeup of the population who voted Brexit, but everyone who led the Brexit campaign were right-wing millionaires. And I think if people needed to look at that and be like, who really cares about us? Socialists like Corbyn and the Labour Party, or right-wing millionaires, and only a fraction of them at that, because the Tory party was split on Brexit. But yeah, overall, I really like Corbyn now. I like Bernie a bit more, if I'm honest. I don't know why that is, but I just do, because I love Bernie's story. It's like a Hollywood movie. Like I was reading, because I read his book, like growing up in New York, poor, and he's talking about like his favorite player being like Jackie Robinson and playing like all these games in the streets, and then being is he the president of CORE at university? Like, I think that's pretty amazing, and like leading all these like sit-ins. And then he was there when Martin Luther King made his "I Have a Dream" speech. Like, I think there's going to be a really good movie about him when I think when he's passed on and stuff. I think people will remember him really fondly for all these things, because it's just amazing. I'm 23. He must have been maybe 18, 19, 20 when he was doing all these things. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that a lot with Jeremy Corbyn too. He's just getting slayed as this anti-Semite.
Yeah.
So, it kind of on that note, what is your take, being outside of America, looking in on the Ilham Omar?
Yeah, so we have a similar situation right now with Jeremy Corbyn, where the media have been absolutely non-stop about it. Like I reported it for our university magazine back in 2016 about the anti-Semitism debate. It's been non-stop, and basically, you'll probably be aware of this. When you're so far left, like for example the Soviet Union as well, there is a lot of people who will start using anti-Semitic tropes about Jews controlling everything. And they get so passionate, and it happens in a lot of Islamic countries as well. They get so passionate about the Palestinians, they start really buying into these anti-Semitic tropes. And I think that's one legit criticism of Omar, because talking about money when she's criticizing Jews, I don't think it's the best thing. I think she quoted that song lyric all about the Benjamins, baby. I think that's not really helpful. And I've heard a lot of Jews say, even though they support her, that's something that she probably shouldn't have done. But at the same time, yeah, like many Jews have said, she's not an anti-Semite. The same with Corbyn, but the pushback they get from people in the Labour Party and in America, the Dem Party, is really depressing. And I think it speaks to how much power Israel's lobbying has in the West, because Israel is such a vital part of US foreign policy and a British foreign policy. Like, we have to remember who helped found this country in the first place, like the Balfour Declaration in 1917. It's the British government, and then the American government really helped a lot of them found this. And I don't really want to get into like, should Israel, the founding of it and everything, because we don't really talk about that in regards to this. But I think what their defense is now a lot of the time, Netanyahu and everything, is just to slander anyone who criticizes Israel at all as an anti-Semite. And I think because it's so complicated, Jews have had such a hard history in the world, since the fall of the temple by the Babylonians, and then later the Romans. They've never had it easy, and they've been outcasts for a lot of it. And I think that plays in, and obviously the Holocaust and everything, but it plays into a lot of the maybe unwillingness a lot of the time for people to criticize Israel, and a lot of the time for Dems to be like, if Israel give them money or power, they kind of turn away. Like, I remember during the Obama presidency, Netanyahu gave a speech to Congress, and best reception you've ever heard anyone get in Congress. And I think Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks made a really good point. Ilhan Omar saying AIPAC has a disproportionate influence on Congress, and it's like you have to sort of support two countries to be a patriotic American. I think fundamentalist Christians believe in Israel has to exist to bring about the end time of the world, where Jews will actually be killed by God, because in fundamentalist Christianity, Jews aren't the chosen people, Christians are. And I think that's far more anti-Semitic than saying Israel, which is one of the most powerful countries in the world, has a lot of influence on Western politics, and they have lobbying groups who pay a lot of money to politicians' campaigns, and that's pretty obvious for anyone to see. And just to sum up the irony, didn't they just announce Nancy Pelosi is going to be a big speaker at AIPAC after she led the charge against Omar? So I don't think she's wrong. I don't think Jeremy Corbyn's wrong on this criticism, but because it is a very sensitive issue and the water has been muddied and everything, but I would say leftist anti-Semitism exists and it's a problem and it should be rooted out. But I would also want to say right-wing anti-Semitism is often disguised as something else. Like, I think one of the strongest lobbying groups in America is something like Christians for Israel or something. Something like, it's called something like that. And I would imagine that that's based on a lot of anti-Semitism about the end times or something, because I think it's a really right-wing Christian group. But yeah, I 100% support Omar. And if she bought into these tropes, because she has made mistakes in the past, I was actually having a look at it. She has said some things about Israel that could be considered anti-Semitic. I think people just need to be more careful and not just associate all Jews with money, because that's an old stereotype, and it's really, really not helpful. So being nonchalant using a song lyric that could be interpreted as anti-Semitic, I think that's bad. And I think she's made a great point about Saudi Arabia today, and that's what she's got to keep doing about Israel. And what I find funny, I'm pretty sure, same with Bernie, I'm pretty sure if Bernie was not a Jew, he would be called an anti-Semite as well. And I'm pretty sure if Omar wasn't a Muslim, today she would have been called an Islamophobe for criticizing Saudi Arabia.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
It's just I think the right wing like to talk about identity politics a lot, but doing stuff like that, it doesn't really help your case that you're all for free speech when you just label something really horrible because they've got a legit criticism against a world power.
He is such a tool. Oh my God.
I didn't realize how much I hated him until he announced. And what it is because during the Ted Cruz campaign, I gave him a pass. I'm like, it's Ted Cruz. Here's some guy, and he's trying to win Texas for the first time since Lyndon Johnson or something, like for Democrats. Yeah, so I'll give him a pass. You know, if he meets with AIPAC, if he doesn't really come down hard on a lot of the issues, I'll be like, okay, he's from Texas. But now he's running for president in a field with all these people, and he's the least progressive of them all. And you know, they expose him for his like Republican ties and everything. Like, it's cringy because I know he's going to get destroyed, and I really wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the first people to drop out. Because
Really?
yeah, because I think I was actually so surprised by. I know this is a little anecdotal as well, but the reaction on Twitter to Beto was really surprising at how many people absolutely hated him. Like, because
I know.
yeah, because when he was running against Ted Cruz, everyone loved him, and I was like, "Oh, this is a bit annoying for Bernie. We've got someone else that's quite popular." And then I was reading on Twitter all the comments, just not even on Bernie sites, just on news articles. It's like, "Yeah, we don't want him," or like, "What has he even got to offer?" And then I think someone retweeted a funny video of just a smaller YouTuber doing like the big hand signs, like Beto does, to seem like he's making a point. And he seems really disingenuous with his speeches because he's so over the top, and he's saying all this like stuff that means nothing. It reminds me of someone like Ronald Reagan or something, or even Obama. I think that's a really good comparison. But Obama at least went into more depth, and he's a great speaker. Beto's not a great speaker, and he's hyperactive, and he's going to be out of his depth totally when he's running. Because what has he got to run on? What's he going to say to people? I've done X, Y, and Z. He's not. He lost the Senate, and I think was he even a congressman? I don't even know what he's done. Like that's how much his record doesn't stick with me. I don't know what he's really done before. Yeah, so that's why I think because when I listen to someone like Andrew Yang, who I didn't know before a couple of weeks ago, I'm like, this guy has stuff to back him up. Like he's given me all the facts, he's given me all the data. Whether I agree with it or not, he brings an interesting point of view. Beto O'Rourke talking like Obama. When you've got a field of people like Elizabeth Warren or even like Cory Booker and Kamala Harris who've set out what their agenda is, this is how we'll do it, and this is why I'm good because I've been doing this in the Senate, or I passed these many things, or I'm Bernie Sanders, I've been in around various positions in politics, I know how to get things done. I don't think when it holds up to scrutiny, I don't think Beto will be very good, and I think the establishment will attach itself to Kamala Harris or Cory Booker rather than Beto. I think there's just I don't think he could beat Trump either. Like I don't think Trump's gonna have it easy this time, and I think he probably should lose. But I think Beto's not going to speak to Trump voters, and the same way I think Bernie's quite smart in the way he doesn't really demonize a lot of them, and he goes to these places to talk to them. And I think a bit like FDR, it's more like this isn't left versus right, this isn't socialist versus capitalist. It's like this is what the country needs. I'm going to do it, and it's going to help you. Yeah, and you should support that rather than Beto talking about like this, you know, the stuff about all this American exceptionism stuff and what a patriotic image of America is. That's not going to help anyone. And what happens is what I said in my latest video. I think is that if you elect someone like that, I think the Republican Party is going to be on its knees if you elect someone like Bernie and people like AOC, just exposing them like time after time, exposing this whole system. If you elect someone like Beto, I think he's going to uphold the system, and I think that paves the way for the Republican Party to make a big comeback because he's going to be so hated.
Yesterday, he was asked about Medicare for all. He did not vote for HR 676 last time. He still is not supportive of it.
Yeah,
deal breaker to me. Absolute deal breaker.
Yeah. Like I was saying, even countries like Cuba have pretty good healthcare, socialized healthcare. They've been under embargo since 1959, and like this country. I don't understand how you can be a young person like him, look to one of the US's biggest allies, the UK, and be like, oh yeah, they've had socialized Medicare or socialized medicine when they were completely bankrupted and destroyed by World War II, and they still had it done. Us in 2020 or 2021, when he becomes president, they can't do it because why? Do you know what I mean? Like we got to spend more money on war, we got to inflate the budget even more, or give tax rates to billionaires. Like there's no logical argument. And what I'm happy about with Bernie Sanders is that he's completely changed the conversation where all these people are supporting it. And Hillary Clinton said it wasn't a feasible idea, and her idea was just make Obamacare a bit better. But now I think, like you're saying, it's a deal breaker to so many people because people are catching on that when he says Canada, even countries like Cuba, you know, there's no reason Cuba should have it and the US shouldn't. And I think, yeah, like I don't think he has enough policies to even skirt around that issue. He's going to be forced to back it, and then when he does, he'll look like he's just coming onto it late. And then you already have even the centrist candidates are supporting it. So I think he really doesn't stand a chance, and I think he's going to be totally weak. And I honestly think he will. If Andrew Yang does get a bit prominent in debates, I could see Beto dropping out before Yang easily.
As a UK perspective, what did you guys think of Hillary?
Oh, so Hillary Clinton in this country, I think it shares a lot with the rest of America. I don't think Hillary Clinton was particularly liked, and obviously she's not infamous for this, but Bill Clinton's pretty infamous, and Bill Clinton is liked in the UK because he played a really prominent role in solving the troubles in Northern Ireland. So in terms of international stuff, Bill Clinton has helped out the UK, but in general, I think just people really hated it, and I think people caught on with Bernie Sanders stuff as well, and for someone like Hillary Clinton to the UK, because her policy positions are so normal, I don't think anything really stands out. So she just seems like a corporate robot to a lot of people. But I don't think many people... A lot of people were gutted when Trump won, but I don't think it was a massive, like, earth-shattering shock to a lot of people, because if you're looking from the outside, Hillary Clinton just an extension of the Obama administration, and she looks like a lot of the politicians we have here. Looks like Theresa May, looks like Margaret Thatcher in a lot of ways. And it's just, when you stand for nothing but nice speeches about how great America is and how great it can be under your leadership, and you have no substantive policy to really put forward, I don't think it really catches on with the world. And I think people, for our lack of knowledge of American politics, I think something you can attach Bernie to is either healthcare, which a lot of people in this country would know about because everyone knows America has really trash healthcare in terms of the funding and everything, and climate change is a big one. So things, because he's so radical on these issues that I think people can be like, that's what he'll do. Same with Trump in a way, because he says, whoa, anti-immigration, you kind of understand what he's about. I don't even think anyone really understood what Hillary Clinton was about in this country. Is a big thing.
Are you guys allowed to have money in politics?
Yeah, this is always funny. What I talk about the problem quick. There is a problem with money in politics in the UK, but it's not like in the US. It's not like I can go have a look at who funds Theresa May. I can just get that up on a spreadsheet and be like, she received $50,000 from this arms manufacturer. What it is in the UK is that the establishment is generally a bit bigger. So the BBC even makes up part of the establishment. So it's sort of like your revolving door in politics, but it's less obvious. It's pretty more sinister. So Theresa May's husband is a massive shareholder in lots of different things, including a private security force called G4S. And when they get a contract by the Tory government, you're like, I know how that's happened. And then the guy who was a director of the BBC's coverage of the EU referendum politics and the general election 2017, he went to work for Theresa May straight after at a top position. So what it is, it's more like the establishment, it's who you know, and it's everyone's together. All the lobbyists have friends of friends, and if, like the US, if you have, you work in the Defense Department, you might get a good job in the defense industry afterwards. But the problem of actual massive donations affecting how everyone votes, it's not as obvious, and there's been a lot of laws. I think we might have had stricter laws in this country for campaign finance, like back in the late 1800s and stuff, because we cracked down hard on corruption because elections were just a joke. It's like you could literally drive a bunch of people to the polls, give them loads of beer, and they'd be like, vote for this person. Our democracy was seriously messed up. I think it might go to show you we are a bit of an older country. We've had democracy in some part for a couple hundred years and everything, a lot longer than the US. But I think they really cracked down on it hard in the late 1800s and 1900s. It's not saying it doesn't exist, but it's a lot more sinister and not obvious to the public. And I think the main people, obviously Rupert Murdoch, was it pretty in bed with Tony Blair because his papers, which traditionally spread right-wing propaganda, supported Tony Blair in the election. And he rang up Tony Blair during the deliberation about Iraq and said, if you don't invade Iraq, we ain't supporting you anymore. And that is a big deal in politics in this country when so many older people read the papers for their news. So, like I was saying, it's not as like in the US, you're like, this guy's funded by big oil, this guy's big pharma. Cory Booker got donations from Jared Kushner's family, so we don't trust him. It's more like, you got to look even deeper in the UK to see who people are married to, who people are friends with, and who they appoint to these various positions. But yeah, that's basically it. It is a massive, massive problem, mainly perpetrated by the right wing and some centre people. Like, we just had a new centre party where people left the Tories and Labour called the Independent Group, but they didn't register as a political party. They registered as a private company, so you can't see who funds them. So it's super shady, and but most people don't know that. So it's like Independent Group. This is a new political party, yeah, but we can't see who funds it, and that's the massive problem. So money in politics is, I think, it's a problem across all capitalist democracies. But the US is just in a lot of cases every time the absolute worst example, and that goes for healthcare as well. Just the flaws are so obvious in the US. That's why I think it's so insane to most people. Nothing's really done to fix them. Where in the UK, you have to be quite in tune to politics, and then you've got to get rid of your biases, because if you're pro-right wing, a lot of the time, you'll just ignore these things anyway because it's to your benefit, because it helps them control power.
What is something you would like to leave with our audience? What's something you want to tell us about the UK, or tell us, encourage us to look out for?
Yeah, that's a good point. So in terms of, I guess the big issue for us at the moment is Brexit, but just know, like, everyone in the country is sick of Brexit, like, and a lot of people have changed their minds on the whole thing, whether they voted leave and remain, and the legitimate arguments for leaving, which there are some, have been totally undermined because of the way the government has handled Brexit. And like I pointed out earlier, Brexit has just been a sideshow and a smokescreen for an internal conflict in the Tory party. That's why we can't get anything done. It's the right wing just messing around, because it's nearly been 3 years and we've barely made any progress, and we're going to have to extend when we're going to leave by. So don't believe all these people like Will of the People, Tommy Robinson, Nigel Farage. Don't believe people like that. Most people are sick of it. Most people just want what's best for them. And like in America, the only similarity to Trump is because people wanted something different. And this country's been screwed over by the right wing for so long. Like, your country's been screwed over by the centrist Democrats and the right wing. They just wanted change, and they voted for something like that. And now most people, they want a decision on what's happened. They either want a decision on the final deal, or they want another referendum. So just don't believe a lot of the propaganda that everyone in the UK just is supporting the right wing and Tories. Most people are sick of this mess, and just the government's not legitimate. It's just an infighting in the Tory party, and that's what Brexit is. It's nothing more than that. And they threw it on us as a country, and it's all their fault. Tory party are responsible for all this mess we're in right now, and that's what I want to leave everyone on. So Theresa May, one of the worst prime ministers of all time. Don't believe anything different.
So yeah, that was the whole interview. Let me know what you think in the comments. Is there anything that I discussed in the interview you'd like me to expand on a separate video? I appreciate if you've made it this far. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at The Cavernacle. Perhaps take a look at my WordPress, which is just The Cavernacle WordPress. And if you made it through all of that, thank you for watching.